Hello, grade 9. How are you today? I hope you all are safe and well. We studied before about chromosomes, and we studied about what makes us different. And we studied about the chromosomes, and we said the genes are part of these chromosomes, and they are made of DNA. And we said also that the nucleus of the human cells contains 23 pairs of chromosomes, and each of these chromosomes, each pair was inherited from each parent. And also we talked about the six chromosomes, and we said the female have two identical sex hormones, which is XX, and the male has two different sex hormones, which is X and Y. We talked about also the sperm and egg cell, and we said each one of them contain one chromosome from each pair. And we said the fertilized eggs are equally likely to produce males or females, 50% males and 50% females. So today our lesson about investigating inheritance, how scientists investigated inheritance. Please open your books, page 214, and follow me. And don't forget to grab your highlighter. Investigating inheritance. Gregor Mendel, this scientist who discovered the law of inheritance and who was investigating inheritance, his name is Gregor Mendel. And also we have like Mendel law when it comes to the inheritance. So a monk called Gregor Mendel used creative thinking to explain inheritance 150 years ago, before genes were discovered. Mendel worked with tall and short pea plants. Each pea flower makes male and female 6 cells, so they can self-pollinate and produce tall or short offspring identical to the parent plants. So here Mendel, he was working on pea plants, okay, and he noticed that the pea plants are producing tall and short offspring. So he was wondered what makes them different, okay? So he started to investigate about the, let's say, the properties of this plant. So Mendel stopped flowers self-pollinating by taking away their anthers. We studied in flowers before, like the reproduction of the flowers, and we said that we have some plants, we call them like bisexual, because they have both female and male organs in the same flower. So they can have self-pollination or pollination. So by any way, these pollens can transfer to the anther and fertilize the ovule or the eggs inside the ovary. So here, the first thing he did, he stopped this self-pollinating. He took away these anthers. Then he used a brush to transfer pollen from his chosen type of pea plant to fertilize the flowers. So, as I said, he took away the anther. So in this case, he wants to stop the self-pollination. Then he took a brush and he started to move these pollens from the chosen type of pea plant to fertilize the flowers. Then all the offspring of the cross between tall and short pea plants were tall. So here what happened? He noticed that these offsprings between these tall and short, they became all of them tall. So when these tall plants in the second generation fertilized each other, some of the third generation were short. So we have this even in humans. So first, you can find like if the father is tall and the mother is short, you will find the first one is tall, second one is maybe tall, then you can find like the children, like someone is tall, someone is short, someone in the middle. But the next generation, or you can find the first generation, like most of them are tall, or all of them are tall. Then the second generation, like their kids, you will find some of them tall, some of them short. This is all because of these inheritance, these properties that pass from the parents to the kids, or to the generation, or to the offspring. So here, if he took these tall generation, which is the first generation, okay, we said the first generation, which is the offspring between tall and short, they became tall. If these tall plants in the second generation fertilized each other, then some of the third generation will be short. Some of them will be short. We can see this in the diagram that we have in our left. You can name this as law of Mendel, or Mendel law of inheritance, okay? This could be by like this. First generation from tall and short, okay? Second generation will be tall. You know why? Because the tall, okay, and the dark color, the big bones, something is like, we call it like something is can beat, or can or something can come over another thing, okay, like the property of this tall, or the height. We call these properties dominant, or dominant genes. These genes of tall plants, of dark colors, of big seeds or something, okay, like this, we call it dominant. They can, we can say it easily, they can beat the other genes, which is, we call them recessive, okay, recessive. So here, as we said, second generation will be tall. If they fertilized each other, third generation, most of it will be tall, and at least one or two will be short, okay, which is minimum, okay, with the minimum of them. So Mendel theory was that two factors control each feature, one factor from each parent. These factors are now called genes. So when he discovered, or when he discovered this this inheritance, he had a theory, and he said we have two factors. One of them, we can inherit this factor from the father, and the other one comes from the mother. So these are genes. We call them genes. The genes in a pair can be the same or different. One gene makes peas tall, another makes them short. Then, when peas have one of each, they are always tall. So genes here that stop other genes having an effect, like the gene for tall pea plants, are called dominant. So here, if we have in our family, we have father tall and mother is short, okay? Most of the kids, or the first generation will be tall. We might have one of our brothers or sisters short, but we call these genes that he or she has recessive genes, that she or he took it from the mother. But most of us are tall because we got the dominant genes from the father. These are strong genes. We can say simply are strong genes. They can compete. They can come over the recessive genes. Okay, what about the recessive and dominant genes? So where did the short plants come from in the third generation? Now we will make it more clear. Mendel invented a code to explain what happens. In the diagram, T shows the dominant genes, which is T capital, shows the dominant genes, and T small shows the version that makes the plant short. This is called a recessive gene because it doesn't show up when there is a dominant gene with it. So in the next page we have diagram that show us the dominant and recessive genes. So as we said, these dominant genes can come over the recessive genes. They can stop the recessive genes from having an effect on the plant or on the human, okay, on any organism. But we still have a recessive genes. So the recessive genes doesn't show up when there is a dominant genes, but when in the third generation this will come up and we can see it. So let's go to the next page. In the first generation, the tall plants have 2 T capital genes. So all their 6 cells, pollens, and ovules have 1. The short plants have 2 T small versions. So all their 6 cells have T small genes. So here, the tall ones, both of them, the tall ones have 2 T capital, 1 from the pollen and 1 from the ovule. And the short genes have 2 T small genes, which is the short ones, the short plants, which is 1 from the ovules and 1 from the pollen. So the second generation plants inherit a gene from each parent. So they have both short T and they have both sorts, which is both types. They have T small and T capital. The T capital version is dominant, so the P plants are all tall. As I said, the first generation, the dominant gene will be we can say will come over the recessive one. So the first generation will be tall. Or if it's dark color and pale color, the dark color will win. So here we have 2 T capital, 2 T small. These letters we prefer to resemble the dominant genes and the recessive genes. So you can choose any letter, but you have to remember, if you are preferring to dominant genes, you have to write it in capital letters or in uppercase letters. But if you are preferring to recessive genes, that means you have to write lowercase letters or small letters. So here, one of them will give T capital, the other one will give T small, and in this case it will come over this, and it will. So as I said, this T capital T small, that means the plant is tall, okay? Here we used the letter T to resemble the tall, to show that we are talking about the height, the tall, if it's tall or short. But we cannot use T for tall and S for short. That means they are different, completely different features or characteristics. So all the second generation are tall because they inherit one of the dominant genes. So if you have a dominant genes from your father or mother, at least one of them, the dominant genes will win, and you will get the strong features, like the height, like the tall, the color, the big bone. Okay, we can say like very sharp structure or details. Each of the second generation plants makes two sorts of sex cells. So here, this is the second generation. So both of them, we have T capital, T small. That means they have the dominant genes for tall and the recessive genes for short. So on average, half carry T capital and half carry T small. So many of the offspring will have T capital T small again. But male 6 cells carrying T capital or T small could fertilize female 6 cells with the same gene. So the plants with T capital or T small could also be made. So what's the meaning of all these words or all these sentences? Look at this diagram here. Here we have T capital T small, T capital T small. So both of these plants are tall, but they still have both of these genes, dominant and recessive. So if the dominant join to the dominant, we will have T capital T small, very strong dominant. If the T capital with the T small, we will have T capital T small. If we have the T small T capital, that means we will get T small T capital, which is tall. So here, the average, we will have three plants or one in 4 to have a chance to have three of 4, we will have them tall. But here we will have only one in these 4 will be short. Why? Because this T small fertilized this T small, so we got T small. In this case, it will be short. So the T capital and T capital T small plants are tall, but the T small plants are short because they don't have the dominant T capital genes. In cross like this, where both parent plants have no one of each genes, there is a 1 in 4 chance that their offspring will be short, like this possibility here. So if one of the parents have the dominant genes, we will have a weak, or we can say like weak possibility to get the recessive genes in one of the offsprings. But if both of them, they have dominant genes only, in this case we will have only dominant genes in the offspring. Mendel found 6 other P features that were inherited in the same way as tallness. Breeding experiments prove that other organisms can inherit different versions of genes in the same way as pea plants. Actually, scientists took this as a benefit, took these studies and this theory from Mendel okay, and they worked on it to breed animals or breed plants to improve the breeding, okay, to improve the generations. So they start to breed plants or animals with the strong features or the dominant genes to get more good features or like perfect generations or strong generations. And also they are using this theory to improve the offsprings of many organisms like animals, like plants, to resist sickness or to resist diseases that can harm them. So now I'm gonna leave you with a video to explain more about these dominance genes and recessive genes, okay? So she's mentioning, or she mentioned a word called allele, okay? Don't confuse yourself about this word, okay? She's explaining about the sections that we have in our chromosomes, okay? That we have in our genes. These are I was talking about, I was explaining or talking about the dominant genes and recessive genes. She's talking about the same thing, but she's mentioning, or she's referring to specific regions or specific versions. So this allele means one or two. It's one of two or more versions of at the same place on this chromosome. Like we have in this chromosome, we have one of two or more. One or two or sometimes more versions. Like we have the tallness, that we have the shortness at the same genes exactly. So that's the meaning of the word allele, which is different form of genes.
So remember, the gene is the slot of information across the chromosome pair. And in the case of eye color, we have a couple of different colors that we can have. We're going to look at one gene that's called the brown-blue eye color gene. If you have two browns, you obviously have brown eyes. If you have two blue alleles on this gene, then you obviously have blue eyes. That makes sense.
Okay, now she's talking about the dominant genes, we can say, or recessive genes.
So, right now we're going to talk about what these are. It'll make a lot more sense when we get to examples. Dominant alleles are stronger alleles. They're stronger traits, and they always show if they're present. If you have one or two, they're going to show up. We represent them with capital letters, like capital T or capital H or capital A.
As I mentioned earlier, these dominant genes or these dominant alleles are can beat or can come over the recessive ones. So they are stronger, and they can, if they are present, they will show up, or they will win, or they can come in this organism as a feature. Okay.
But keep in mind, you don't have like necessarily H's on your DNA. It's that sequence of nucleotides. Recessive alleles are weaker. They only show if both are present, and they are represented with lowercase letters. For example, lowercase t, lowercase h, lowercase a. So the interaction of these two types of traits are going to determine what kind of trait that you have. So let's say we're going to look at freckles, because I'm a frecklepotamus. So freckles, the trait of freckles is a dominant allele. So we're going to represent with capital F. And lowercase f we're going to use to represent no freckles, because no freckles is a recessive situation. So what we have are three possibilities of inheritance. You could get a freckle from mom and a freckle from dad. In case you have two dominant alleles, so you get freckles. You could get a freckle from mom and a no freckle from dad, or vice versa. Now you have a dominant and a recessive, and that dominant will overpower, cover up the recessive allele, and you will have freckles. And if you have two lowercase, now you have no freckles. But if there is one dominant allele there, it always covers up the lowercase formation. So, when choosing letters for these genetic things, always use letters that have very different capital and lowercase, ways of being, so you don't get confused. Like the W thing, I don't really like to use W's. Like big B, little b, good choice. Big R, little r, good choice. Little p, big P, bad choice. They look the same. Big C, little c, good grief. Who can keep track of any of that? So always use.
So now she's talking about how can we choose letters, or how can we write the form of these dominant and recessive genes. It's better to use different, very different upper and lower cases. So like this here, she gave you an example about the B, because we can write it with different forms. B capital is different from B small, and R also. But the P or W or V, they are different from each other, similar to each other. So we can sometimes we can make mistakes or confuse about them. So now let's go to the summary of the lesson. Investigating inheritance. Our features are influenced by the genes we inherit. So if we have strong genes or dominant genes, we can inherit very strong features. And if we have recessive genes or weak genes, not weak genes, we can say like recessive genes. In this case, we can inherit weak features or recessive features. Genes come in pairs, and organisms can inherit two different versions of gene. When one gene of pair is dominant, it controls a characteristic. So this was all about investigating inheritance. I hope you understood the lesson. If you have any question, write it down, and don't forget the yellow box. I hope to see you very soon, and see you next time in a new lesson. Bye bye.